Thank you for watching my show. William Wallace for America. With me today in the Louisiana State Capitol is State Representative Beau Beaullieu. How are you today? How's it going
I'm
there?
doing well. Thank you,
Did
William,
I
for having
pronounce
me.
it right this time?
It's Beaullieu, but it's
Beaullieu.
Beaullieu. It's all good.
It kind of rolls off the tongue differently,
It does.
I guess. Well, today's an exciting day. If we got some time afterwards, we'll talk about the budget, afterwards and what happened with that. But where's your district exactly?
It's District 48. It's Iberia Parish, Lafayette Parish, and a little sliver of St. Martin Parish.
I love it. Well, we're going to go over your legislation. You got a bunch of good stuff here from what I've been looking at.
Been very busy.
There we go. We got 142 provides for the termination of custodial property under the Uniform Transfers.
Yeah, so in the Uniform Transfer of Minors Act in Louisiana, we said at the age of 18 that we had to transfer that money to the minors, but a lot of parents save money for minors in one of these UTMA accounts, and this allows us to keep those monies in the custody of the parents while the kids go to college and everything until the age of 22.
So this was those college savings accounts?
Yeah, no, it's a custodial account, so it doesn't have to be strictly for college. It can be for any purpose, but allows the parent to still maintain control of it until the child is 22 years old.
And I know this is something you've got a lot of experience in because you're a financial planner.
Correct. So I learned it personally through one of my kids and a broker-dealer trying to terminate the custodianship while they were in school, and it became a problem. So I said, well, I'll just change the law.
You legislature change the law. Love it. 154 establishes an income tax exemption for certain veteran-owned businesses. Anything involving the veterans?
Yes. Yeah. No. So the goal of this was to create a tax exemption for the first $50,000 in income for our new veteran business entrepreneurs. It didn't make it out of committee. We had some roadblocks when it came to exemptions and credits, and so unfortunately that one didn't make it through the process.
So this was a tax exempted the first $50,000 for a veteran-owned business.
Correct.
This sounds smart to me because I growing up, I heard how many people. I say growing up. You used to hear all the time, especially back when the law was passed when I was growing up, is what I meant to say, that foreign-owned businesses get federal tax exemptions.
Yeah, they do have.
So why shouldn't a veteran get a local tax exemption?
That's right. And so we weren't thinking about the foreign businesses at the time. We were just thinking about our veterans. They finished their service, very talented, with many skills. We wanted them to start businesses here in Louisiana, so it was a pro-veteran bill and a pro-business bill.
I love it. 171 provides relative to requirements for dealers and marketplace facilitators.
So right now, this was dealing with our remote sellers. It's sales tax of online goods from out-of-state vendors. And basically there was a very kind of complicated way where someone would qualify to having to collect sales taxes for out-of-state vendors. We wanted to simplify it, and now we basically changed the threshold. It's a pretty technical bill, but Louisiana is going to be better for it, and hopefully we'll be able to collect more sales taxes and make it a level playing field. The important part is a level playing field for our local hometown businesses versus the out-of-state businesses.
Is that the one that was like a year or two ago was to be a constitutional amendment?
Yeah, so it was a couple of years ago where they created the Remote Sellers Commission and started collecting these online sales taxes, and it changed the threshold. Instead of having 200 transactions, it's now just a flat $100,000. So if you do $100,000 or more business in Louisiana, you're required to collect sales taxes and remit it back to the state and local municipalities.
All right, I like the attention to detail. 241 provides for a flat rate for purposes of calculating the income tax for individuals.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do here is I got with our fiscal office, and we were trying to find a break-even flat tax for the state of Louisiana, and that was at 3.49%. And then when we found out if we did that, we were going to penalize some of those people in the lower brackets. So we started playing with the numbers, and it didn't quite work out like we want, but we got a lot of good intel off of it.
Yeah.
And we're going to use it in the next couple of years when we try to, further enhance our tax system in Louisiana and lower our taxes.
I know there's some who eliminate the tax or the income tax, but this is a way to get a flat tax.
So yeah, and so our thought was, hey, let's flatten it out. And now as we get more revenue into the state, we can just chip away and we can lower that tax as more revenue comes to the state and eventually get rid of it.
I like the phase-out method there.
Correct.
260 provides relative to federal election guidance and funding.
Yeah, so we called this one our Biden Bucks bill. Right now, you have the federal government who's trying to take over our elections in Louisiana. And what we wanted to do here is we want the federal government to stay out of our elections. We run pretty good elections here in Louisiana. We haven't had any kind of massive scares with our elections, and it's because our legislature has control of it. We don't want the federal government taking control of that, so any directives or funding from the federal government would have to come through Louisiana's legislature to be either utilized from money standpoint or from a policy standpoint. That bill has made it all the way through and passed the Senate, and it's now on the governor's desk for consideration.
You know, our federal Constitution, United States Constitution, provides that the legislature be in charge of the elections, but we're hearing more and more around the country how federal regulations and how the state legislatures have, how shall we say, not stepped up to the plate.
Correct. Well,
and you guys are stepping to the plate.
We're trying to be proactive to make sure that Louisiana maintains control and we continue to have fair and safe elections.
What is one way that the federal government is trying to take over our elections?
They have federal directives that Biden issued in the last couple of years that's basically mandating that all of the federal agencies have different get-out-to-vote efforts and different corners of our state where they're trying to encourage different voter techniques and get out the vote, and not doing it evenly across our state, which we have a serious problem with.
Thank you for that. Thank you for protecting our elections. We've got 386 establishes a tax credit for infant adoptions and the Strong Louisiana Families Tax Credit.
Yeah, so with this one, I ended up setting this one aside, but we made it all the way to the Senate, and Representative Jack McFarland had another bill that did similar, and so we ended up merging, and there's going to be another bill on that list that we ended up merging the two. And basically, with our pro-life state in Louisiana, we wanted to make it easier for people to be able to give money to foster care organizations. And so we're creating a tax credit that allowed us to get more monies to these foster care organizations. And for those people who choose life, we wanted to have another opportunity and for those children to be able to grow up in a very healthy environment.
I love the approach because I've always said in the past when people were fighting over pro-life or pro-choice, there were so many other opportunities like in the adoption system and the foster system, and I'm glad that you're doing that here.
Yep.
Appreciate that. 558 provides for the collection of remittance of state and local sales and use taxes.
So to me, this might have been one of the biggest bills of the session that nobody heard of. So if you remember 2 years ago, we had a centralized sales tax collection constitutional amendment that failed on the ballot. Right now in Louisiana, we have 54 different tax collectors. So if you're a business operating in all 64 parishes, you have to remit 54 different tax returns on a monthly basis to pay your sales tax. What we did is we moved control of the tax collection system from the Department of Revenue to the Uniform Local Sales Tax Board and told them that they needed to create a single system for all the local tax collectors. So at the end of this, once it's implemented, we're going to have two tax collection systems in Louisiana, one that the state's in control of and one that the local tax collectors control of. So it's not a perfect centralization of it, but we're going to be going from 54 collectors to 2. This is a huge win for our business.
Huge win.
This is a huge win for our business community, and we're not creating bureaucracy like someone argued in the constitutional amendment. It's going on an existing board. I mean, our businesses are going to be thankful.
This could have been the biggest bill of the session.
Yes.
So why is it not the biggest bill of the session?
Well, we were strategically trying to get through the process without headwinds and working with all parties to make it go as we needed, and it did. We were successful with it. Now we can brag about it. We didn't want anybody to stop it in its tracks.
I got you.
It's on the governor's desk for signature, and I think he's going to sign it, and then we'll celebrate.
Well, and not only you celebrate, but businesses are going to celebrate because this just makes a huge win. It makes doing business easier in Louisiana to bring more business into the state.
That's correct.
Another piece of the puzzle. I appreciate that. 622 increases the net operating loss deduction allowed for tax year 2023.
Yes. So right now, businesses, when they have a net operating loss, they can only deduct 62% of that loss on an ongoing basis. We were trying to move that up to 100%, and for the carry forwards with it. The fiscal note ended up too big. We amended it a couple of times. We thought we were going to be able to get it at least, 72%. We thought we were going to be able to get it to 80% at least to kind of get a little bit of a gain for businesses. But again, the note was too big. we got the numbers we need so we can bring it back in the next couple of years and hopefully have another big win for business.
I like the stick-to-itiveness
Right.
on that one, and
Look,
working to get.
a lot of these bills will set the stage for something for future legislation. We're gathering a lot of information. We don't know the numbers and how it's going to affect the state until we file the bills and have the fiscal office working on them. So a lot of times you'll see some bills out there, and I don't want to call them bait, but they're out there strictly so we can gather intel.
Yeah. Well, you get the information, and then, like I said, the discussion needs to be had.
Correct.
And you're bringing everybody out of the woodwork in this to be able to work on it for the next year to make it better. Instead of passing bad legislation, you're doing the research to create some good legislation.
That's correct.
I love that. 629 exempts from local sales tax and use taxes certain prescription drugs administered.
Yeah, so we had a big bill last year that exempted certain prescription drugs that are applied or injected in different medical offices. All we did was we add 2 other prescriptions to it. One was for wet eye, degeneration of the eyes, and another one was for some another little medicine. I'm not in the medical field.
Yeah.
I carried the bill because I know the tax side of it.
Right.
Very minimal impact on the state fisc, and was something that needed to be done.
657 provides relative to tax benefits for adoption of children from foster care.
So that's the one we talked about earlier. The one we spoke about earlier, we basically created a substitute bill and filed this other bill, and that was in its place.
I like that. Okay. We got HCR 3 exempts users of the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge in the Marsh Island Swamp.
So
I can already tell you.
So look, in my area, my other one was the biggest for the state, I think. This was the biggest for my people in South Louisiana. When they would go to Marsh Island or they'd go to Rockefeller Refuge to shrimp or crab or fish, the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries was making them check in and check out. Now, I grew up in these marshes fishing all of my life and throwing the cast net and all that kind of stuff, catching crabs with my parents. I brought my kids doing it. But now all of a sudden you have to check in and check out. Well, we're in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. You don't always have good cell service. So if you didn't have good cell service and you were fishing in one of the canals, you can have to go miles out of your way to have to check in at one of their check-in stations. It was just a mess. So basically I talked to Wildlife and Fisheries. I wanted them to change their rules that they were asserting on our outdoors people. And when they didn't do it, I filed a bill to fix it, and we fixed it, and it was a huge success for the people of South Louisiana.
And what's interesting, when you were growing up, you didn't even have a cell phone
No,
to be
that's
able
correct.
to.
That's right.
You didn't have to check in or nothing.
No,
They're
no.
like, wait a minute, you got to check in.
I had to check in with my mama. When we took the boat out, I had to check in when I got back to make sure we were safe.
And look, and that's more important than Wildlife and Fisheries is mama.
That's right. That's right.
37 HCR designates April 19th as LSU Day at the legislature.
Yeah, that was just a simple recognition. Some of these resolutions are recognitions of different days here at the Capitol, and I'm a proud alumni of LSU, proud alumni of UL Lafayette as well for graduate school. But so that was something we did for LSU.
I like to read them because in addition to you giving them a chance on the floor, the listeners get a chance to recognize it also.
That's right.
59 requests the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission to withdraw its proposed rule with respect to climate-related disclosures.
Yeah, so as an investment advisor, I'm familiar with this, and the SEC had come out and said any publicly traded companies would have to start reporting on its use and its customers' use or their carbon footprint and what they were doing
ESG?
in all this ESG stuff. And they were going to require publicly traded banks to report on all their customers and say what kind of carbon footprint all their customers would have. And so what this did is we were urging the SEC to get rid of this proposed rule, because it would eventually our small businesses would have to start monitoring their carbon footprint, and it's another cost to doing business with no funding source from the federal government.
And it's not going to have an effect on the environment. It's simply going to have an effect on the businesses and the customers having to pay more money.
It's more red tape. That's all it is.
Exactly. Well,
environmental red tape.
Thank you for finding another piece of the puzzle that we have to get rid of. HCR 70 requests retirement systems and the state treasurer to report. Okay, that's
so no. This is a different one. This is another ESG legislation. Okay. So what we're doing here, and this passed as well. So our retirement systems, and we have something like $65 billion invested in our state treasury and retirement systems. We're making them report to us if they're using any kind of non-financial factors to invest their dollars. So if they're using any of this ESG stuff we want to know about it because we want them to look at risk and return, not on the environmental, social, and government's reasonings. And we also want to know if any of the people they're investing in are boycotting our oil and gas industry, because our oil and gas industry has put food on the table of Louisiana for many generations, and for them to be boycotting against our homegrown companies, I want to know about it.
I love this. This right here, like you said, protects Louisianians from policies that do nothing but cost us more money.
That's correct.
All right, we got 144 creates the Elections Consolidation Task Force to study the consolidation and streamlining of Louisiana's elections.
Yeah, so this one was, I was asked to file this at the end, and we didn't have enough time to run it. But a lot of my constituents come to me and say, hey, look, we got too many elections. Sometimes they don't even realize when there's an election happening. And a lot of times what you'll see is when somebody wants to pass a tax, they'll do it in an election when nobody's looking.
Right.
And so you have very low voter turnout. They'll pass the tax and nobody realizes it. We want to try and minimize the number of elections. This is something we might try and tackle next year.
I agree 100% because, like you said, they always try to sneak in those taxes when nobody's looking.
That's correct.
And this is one way to stop it. I
That's
appreciate
correct.
the legislation. 147 provides relative to the use of the House chamber.
Yeah, so the young Republicans had approached me. My daughter is the national committee chairperson for the young Republicans here in Louisiana, and they have a list of people who are authorized to use the House chamber. And that rule that I passed is going to be overturned by another rule that we passed. Basically, what we're doing is we're allowing the young Republicans to be able to use the House chamber. The young Democrats currently are allowed to use it, so we were just adding the young Republicans to the name.
Why aren't the Republicans allowed to use it?
Well, they just weren't on the list.
Okay.
So back in the 80s, they passed this. I don't know if they had a young Republicans group back in the 80s. This was a state made up of a lot of Democrats.
So this bill's putting them on the list to be able to use
Correct.
it.
That's
All
correct.
right, I love
in
it.
the off season.
So we've got 184 designates May 31st as Louisiana AAHOA Members Appreciation Day.
So that's the Asian American Hotel Owners Association.
Okay.
So throughout Louisiana, we have a lot of Asian Americans who own hotels. I mean, they represent like I think 85 or 90% of the hotels in the state. And when you start to look at the fiscal impact they have on the state, it's amazing. They're getting organized as a political group, and I think it's important to recognize their spirit of entrepreneurship and what they bring to Louisiana and the number of jobs they create in the state.
So let's talk about the budget for a second.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff. They just voted today, HR 3 to bust the spending cap.
Right.
That's what people are saying.
Right, and I supported that measure.
Okay.
And look, I've had 3 bills over the last couple of years to rein in on our expenditure limit, with the whole thought that we need to limit the growth in government. To me, it's a big thing. It's one of the reasons I ran. We've been very fiscally responsible over the last couple of years. They also had passed some taxes before I got in here, to where we have those taxes impacting and a lot of federal dollars circulating in our economy. We have more cash available right now in the state of Louisiana than ever before. And so what we're hoping to do, and which the way the budget is moving towards, we're looking to pay off more debt than ever before in the state of Louisiana. We're looking at over $600 million in payments toward the state's retirement debt, which would be huge. We've gotten our rainy day fund and our budget stabilization fund through this. We're thinking it's going to be at $2.7 billion. So paying down $600 million in debt and having our savings account all the way up to $2.7 billion. We're going to be investing in our teachers by giving them a pay raise, and we're also going to be investing in our law enforcement by giving them some supplemental pay. So from a recurring expense standpoint, we've minimalized that, but we have some big payments going on debt and savings and in one-time infrastructure projects. And this will be huge for Louisiana. No time have we ever been able to accomplish something like this. Very fiscally responsible with the use of the cash on hand. And look, in years to come, if we continue having this kind of cash in play, I want to continue paying down that debt.
Right.
To me, getting rid of debt, cash is king. Get rid of that debt. And at some point, we need to continue to lower the taxes. Well, another bill that passed this year wasn't one of mine, but that plays into this budget, is we've passed Senator Allen's bill to where we're going to be getting rid of the franchise tax over the next 5 years, phasing it out. This is a bad tax for Louisiana. So we've put a lot of money in savings, paying down debt. A lot of money is on one-time infrastructure project and lowering taxes at the same time. It's a win-win for the entire state.
All of this is in this bill that passed today, HCR3.
Well, this was a resolution to allow us to exceed the expenditure limit. And in order to give the teacher the pay raises that they receive, and in order to give the supplemental pay to our law enforcement, we were going to have to exceed the expenditure limit. So that was a big part of it.
So there's some other groups that have said basically raising the spending cap, and adding and spending all the money like drunken sailors,
Correct.
basically, is a way to put us in trouble in 4 or 5 years, like what happened before
Correct.
in the Jindal years.
That's correct.
In the Jindal years. But what you're telling me is this approach with what you all passed today, which was the busting the spending cap,
Right.
is being done in a responsible way that has a combination of saving some money, spending some money on some projects, which is going to help create some jobs.
Yeah, I encourage anybody to go, and on House Ways and Means, HB2 comes through us. That is the capital outlay bill. I encourage anybody to go through that capital outlay bill. I went through it for a third time this morning looking at it. It is the most fiscally responsible capital outlay. But every time I wanted to cut a project to free up some cash, I guess, and put more in debt, it was a road project, or it was a sewer project, or it was a highway project, or a port project, and this, or a university deferred maintenance project with crumbling buildings. So it was all stuff that we needed to invest in, and I think it's a great use of, and again, one-time monies that are not reoccurring expenses.
I love this.
Yep.
Well, when I say I love this, I love the fact that it sounds like this plan is going to be looked over to be responsible.
Right.
Because I got to tell you, I've heard the other groups have talked
Right.
about being irresponsible.
I've heard too.
And I've heard the other argument. But I love the fact when I hear, even if somebody that has an opinion that's different than mine, I love when somebody is looking at it enough to where it's going to be held responsibly.
Right. Now, look, when you look in some of the bills, there's stuff in there that I don't like. So let's be very clear.
Yeah.
There's some things in there that I don't think should be in there. But, we opted with our extra cash to pay down that debt and to put it on one-time infrastructure. Folks with another political spectrum than mine might opt to do something else with it. We represent the whole state of Louisiana.
So how do we stop that?
That's where the magic is going to happen, and that's what we got to minimize. And again, like on HB2, we all but eliminated most all of it. I think you could find that in some of the bills, but you're not going to find it in the bill that we had on the House side and HB2 side.
2 final questions for you, because when I watched the vote, they didn't debate the HCR3 too much.
Right.
There wasn't much debate on it. I've seen y'all debate a chicken sandwich more than today.
Right.
But speaking of the chicken sandwich, what legislation would you pass to make the state sandwich, and what would it be?
The state sandwich. A steak sandwich. What about like a crawfish po' boy?
Now that's a good
crawfish
one.
po' boy.
I'm sure somebody's going to debate that because
Right.
I've heard muffalata before that.
Right. Muffalata. Look, I can eat my weight in muffalatas.
Well, and then also, speaking of legislation, did you know that I think there should be legislation passed that would update the pictures of all the legislators on the legislation site? Would you support updated pictures?
As they age?
As they age.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that have been around here for a long time. I mean, that picture was taken 20 years ago.
Exactly. So would you support that?
I'll be fine with it.
Any other final words for anybody else?
Just I value the input that I get from my constituents, and even those who are not, who reach out to my office and let me know their concerns. If you have any good ideas, any things that you want us to work on with future legislation, please let me know. I'm honored every time I get to put on this pen. I'm tickled pink that this is an opportunity for me to be able to serve Louisiana. I'm humbled that District 48 has elected me and continue to let me serve, and I'm hoping that they keep. I have 2 more terms. I'm a freshman.
All right.
I'm a rookie. Do a lot of stuff, but I'm still a rookie.
Representative Beaullieu, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate you.
Everybody else, please share the interview. We got some other ones coming up. Thank you so much.